where he's incorporating Eastern mysticism, ideas of Buddhism and Hinduism and so on, and amalgamating those things, these religious traditions, with Western traditions, with, Virgin Mother Goddess images and images of Jesus and Muhammad and so on. All of this blended together into this ecumenical one-world religious idea that he was putting forth in all of his paintings. And that becomes very clear if you study his work. But he was also very involved politically, and he became the spiritual mentor of Henry Wallace. And Wallace was the Secretary of Agriculture at the time, and he would under FDR, and he would become FDR's vice president some years later. But while he was Secretary of Agriculture, he comes to know Roerich, and they develop this mentor-disciple relationship where Wallace is writing him letters and calling him his guru, and writing about all of these New Age ideas and writing about this mystical stone that Roerich had in his possession and that supposedly had these magical properties to it and all this other kind of stuff, and referring to America as the land of destiny and so on. And Roerich was such a celebrated figure. Another one of his disciples was a guy named Louis Horch, who had a number of important government positions in FDR's administration as well. And FDR, Wallace, and Horch were all Freemasons. They were all very high-ranking Masons at the time. And Horch was so enamored with Roerich that he decides to build this skyscraper, this big building there in Manhattan in New York, to house Roerich's paintings and to be a celebration of Roerich himself. And he calls it, it's called the Master Building. It's still there today. We go there with our cameras, and we talk to the historiographer there and so on. But the Master Building was so named for Roerich himself, meaning that he was the master, the spiritual guru, this master. And today, what's really bizarre about Roerich is there are some New Agers who channel him, like they believe he's spiritually still out there, and they channel him and get messages from Nicholas Roerich. But even in his lifetime, they saw him as this enlightened person and so on.
And Roerich, he was, when you said he was politically involved, I mean, he was politically involved with the League of Nations, which was really one of the first attempts at world government. And this is the guy that passed on the quote-unquote Great Seal to Wallace, who was the Secretary of Agriculture, later the Vice President, onto FDR, and why it's on the back of the dollar bill, correct?
Absolutely. Roerich was said to be the inspiration for ultimately why the Great Seal ended up on the back of the dollar bill. That's why he's so significant ultimately in that era. And people, suspected that and believed that even at that time. And this is not from, again, conspiracy authors. This is, if you get the book Tournament of Shadows, that's done by at least one New York Times editor, for goodness sake, who wrote that book, and has all this documentation on the influence of Roerich. American Heritage is another research group that talks about him and talks about how much influence Roerich had over the Oval Office, because FDR apparently had met him at least once. There was this Roerich Peace Pact that was signed by the FDR White House because Roerich was this big advocate for international peace and so on. And it was really, Jason, it was his involvement in the Theosophical Society that was founded by Madame Blavatsky, and Henry Wallace was a theosophist. The whole Theosophical Society is really the underbelly and the undercurrent of the League of Nations, because they were writing and talking about the brotherhood of man, okay, and seeing in all world religions that they were one and the same. That was the inspiration for having this League of Nations and trying to unite everybody together. And you had people like Mahatma Gandhi, you had Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, that were all members of this Theosophical Society and trying to bring about this world unity. And Roerich, even under FDR's White House, was working for the Secretary of Agriculture, and they send him out to go find these seeds and grasses and whatnot. And while he's out there, he's apparently working politically to create like a great Asian union from all of these Buddhist theocracies that are out there, so that they can be amalgamated into this world government. So it was, he was affecting things, he was impacting things at a very occult level, at an arcane level, because he's out searching for Shambhala, this mystical land. He's searching for signs of the Christ. If people had any idea just how deeply occult the United Nations and the League of Nations are and were, I mean, it would just make your hair stand on end. But all of this is being done. They're channeling these supernatural demonic spirits that are inspiring them, and so on, and influencing, I mean, the most powerful leaders in the world at that time. It's just incredible.
It is incredible. Yeah. And, one of the things I want to talk about in the final segment coming up is, one of those things that he went looking for. You talked about Shambhala. Well, how about the second Holy Grail, or the other Holy Grail, however you want to put it, which was this Stone of Destiny. And one of the most striking images I've seen in the film is at the Manly P. Hall Society. There's this little, what seems to be a bronze statue of Rorik holding this thing. I mean, he literally looks like a character out of Mortal Kombat, folks, holding the Stone of Destiny. We'll be back with the final segment with Chris Pinto. It's the InfoWarrior with Jason Bermas. Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.tv. One of those things that really stuck in my mind was that statue of Rorik, holding this quote-unquote Stone of Destiny. What is the significance of this stone?
Well, the stone, as you said, it was something delivered to him in Paris in 1923 to him and his wife. And this whole mystery. The stone was thought to be the Stone of Destiny. And the Stone of Destiny supposedly is traced all the way back to the Pillow Stone of Jacob written about in the Bible. When Jacob goes into the cave at Bethel and he has the dream and he sees the ladder going, from heaven to earth and so on. And then he wakes up and the pillow stone that he had laid upon, he sets up for an altar. Well, that stone apparently had been taken into Solomon's temple by the Jews centuries ago. Then with the fall of Jerusalem, under Nebuchadnezzar from Babylon, attacks the city. Then, according to legend, the prophet Jeremiah takes that stone and brings it to Scotland, to make a long story short. And then the Scottish kings end up using that as their throne. They sit on this stone, and the Scottish kings are crowned upon this stone. They call it the Stone of Destiny. If you go to Edinburgh Castle today, and we go there, there's a whole big display on the Stone of Destiny, and they have a big mural saying, the kings of Scotland crowned on the Stone of Destiny, and so on. The stone was then supposedly captured, it was captured supposedly by the English king in 1296. He brings it then to Westminster Abbey, and from that time on, they built a coronation chair at Westminster Abbey, put this stone beneath the chair. A special compartment was built for it. And all the kings and queens of England were crowned on this stone. That includes Queen Elizabeth I, Henry VIII. The last monarch crowned on it was Queen Elizabeth II, the current Queen of England, was crowned on this stone, supposedly. Now, then there's this whole big controversy over, well, is that the real stone or not, or what happened? And that's part of the mystery that we chase down in this film.
And there are some believe that it was actually, you discussed this skyscraper that was built, that it's actually hidden away in the cornerstone of this skyscraper, which is basically a monument to Rorik.
Right. Well, Rorik claimed that was the stone that was delivered to him in this box, in this casket that he's holding. Mm-hmm. And that image that you mentioned that's there in Manly Hall's library, which is a little bronze figure of Rorik holding this casket, and he's staring down at the casket, right? And this is something that Henry Wallace the Vice President of the United States had written about. He writes a letter to Roerich, and he says, I envision you holding the casket, the precious casket, and so on, right? And he says, we await the stone in this glorious land of destiny. So the Vice President of the United States, or Secretary of Agriculture at the time, is writing about this artifact and saying that they're awaiting it, and seeing it as a symbol of empowerment. And what we show in the film is that the stone, at least according to what Roerich believed he had, was a stone that was, according to legend, cut from the crown of the archangel Lucifer, according to Manly P. Hall. And we believe that's the reason Roerich valued that stone.
Well, you guys have just done a bang-up job on this almost 9-hour series. Eye of the Phoenix is truly the capstone on this. I may not agree with all of it, but it is done so well, and I believe everybody out there should check out a copy. I thank you so much for spending an hour with us. Remember, you can get all these at INFOWARRIOR.com. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thanks, Jason.